Russia claims it's scaling back military operations in parts of Ukraine as the two nations are engaged in the latest rounds of negotiations. But reports of Russian forces targeting civilians across the country continue. CBS News' Debra Alfarone has more.
A Russian attack left a gaping hole in a Ukrainian government building in the port city of Mykolaiv Tuesday. Authorities said the explosion killed at least 7 people and injured many more, all of them civilians. The violence comes as negotiators from Ukraine and Russia met in Turkey to discuss a ceasefire. A Russian defense minister said Russia would sharply reduce military activity near Kyiv and another key Ukrainian city to increase mutual trust. But U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken expressed doubt about Russia's intentions.
There is what Russia says, and there's what Russia does. We're focused on the latter.
President Biden held a call with several leaders of European allies on Tuesday. The president said they agreed to see whether Russia is sincere or if they're trying to buy time to launch a new military effort. The president also met with Singapore's prime minister at the White House, calling Russia a threat to not only Europe, but Asia as well.
It's an attack on the core international principles that underpin peace and security and prosperity everywhere, including in the Indo-Pacific.
Ukrainian forces have been able to claw back some territory from the Russians, but Ukraine's president warns the war is not over. Debra Alfarone, CBS News, the White House.
CBS News reporter Mary Ilyushina joins me now from the capital of Latvia. Mary, what is the latest on peace talks between Russia and Ukraine?
Today, I think we can easily say it was the most important diplomatic sort of breakthrough since Russia launched this invasion. The two sides have met in Istanbul, where Ukraine laid out in its clearest way what kind of security guarantees it needs from the West to agree to a key Russian term, which is Ukraine as a neutral country, which means it's not going to join NATO or seek to obtain nuclear weapons in the future. And Russia said, again, for the first time, that they saw the talks today as very practical and kind of described it in really positive terms. So they said that they're willing to take 2 steps towards Ukraine, towards de-escalation. The first one, the major one, is that the Russian military said it's decided to scale back their presence and activities in Kyiv and Chernihiv directions, which could be really key if that materializes on the ground. And Ukraine, again, they've issued all their demands, and they're now sort of hoping that Russia will come back to respond to them with something concrete.
With that as the backstory, what has Ukraine's reaction been to Russians saying it will scale back the military operations ongoing in Kyiv? And what does that really mean?
Well, that's what we're all trying to see, because, it has been met with some skepticism because, on the same day that Russia said it's going to scale back some of its activities, they also made a big hole in the government building in Mykolaiv. So I think the general consensus is that as long as it materializes on the ground, as long as they see a real sort of withdrawal of forces, then it will be something to proceed on. But obviously, we'll have to see what the next few days are going to bring in the situation. We've heard again from the United States as well on this topic, again, quite cautious and, a little bit skeptical assessment of this is that, again, as long as we see this happening, then it's obviously a positive thing, but it needs to materialize.
Is there any sense either side's leverage has shifted in the peace negotiations?
Well, it appears that Russia stalled in its campaign on multiple directions in, Kyiv, especially because it appeared that they were trying to encircle the city. They were trying to take some important ground, and Ukraine was able to fight back. So Russia actually lost some ground there that they've won before. And that happened in several other spots. So Russia has been signaling that, they will scale back towards the east of the country. And they say that now their main goal is the so-called liberation of Donbass, which is where some of the separatists are located, and they're supporting the Kremlin in this situation. So they have been signaling that they're willing to sort of scale back, and that has been interpreted as their potential way to sort of save their face after they have not been as successful as they might have thought they would be in Ukraine.
How can Russia and Ukraine even engage in peace talks? We're watching a land war. Do they have diplomatic back channels or some other connection they're using for this?
There's obviously a lot of mistrust between the two sides, which is, we've seen it during these peace talks as well. There are obviously diplomatic channels, but what's interesting is that Ukraine seemed to have engaged a Russian oligarch, Roman Abramovich, who was sort of an agreed contact person in negotiations, both by Russia and Ukraine, to sort of lead this slightly unofficial channels. He obviously wields a lot of power in Russia because he has been considered part of Putin's circle for a long time, but also he has a lot of ties in Ukraine. There's a Jewish community that is very close with Abramovich there, and he's sort of very influential in those circles as well. So he has been engaged in sort of the go-to person that Ukraine came to, asking to find people to talk to negotiate, maybe outside of the actual, tables.
Joining us from the capital of Latvia, Mary Ilyushina. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you.